Okay, hello everyone. This is Professor Lei. Welcome back.
Now let's start to talk about Chapter 8. Okay, so Chapter 8 is about sales and operations planning. Okay, um, okay, let's first look at the learning objectives. So the learning objectives, okay, the first one, of course, what is the sales operations planning? Why we need a sales operations planning, right? Okay, given we know what it is, how we coordinate it with the manufacturing, logistics, service, and the marketing plans. Okay, so this is important. And then, okay, based on we already learned what and how sales and operation planning works. All right, um, we start to construct different type of aggregate operations, sales and operations planning. Okay, basically we employ four different strategies. Okay, of the aggregate operations planning in order to meet for the demand. We will talk about just in a second. Okay, every strategy in detail. All right. The third one is the yield management. Okay, this is actually an interesting part. But after my discussion, my consideration, I decided not to cover this with an exam. But if you are interested about this, feel free to to look over this. I think you only have one page for this yield management. All right, look over it, and if you have any question or if you have anything to discuss about, just send me an email. All right. Okay. Now let's look at what is the sales and operations planning. Okay. So remember that within the previous chapters, we talk about the market demand, we talk about the supply capacity, right? We talk about the inventory management, okay? But even if we have very accurate forecast for the market demand, and actually we estimate the supply capacity properly, all right? We still need the sales and the operations planning to kind of balance, okay, the market demand, the outside market demand, and the inside capacity. Okay, so basically, what is the sales and operations planning? The textbook gives us the very straight definition. It's the process that helps firm provide better customer service, lower inventory, shorten the customer lead times, stabilize the production rates, and give top management a handle on the business. So basically, this is the sales and operations planning. In a sense, basically trying to balance between the market demand, the outside demand, and the inside supply. All right. So to make it more accurate, to make the let's say the outside demand is fit for the inside supply, or this inside supply is fit for the market demand. All right. So that's what it means. And um, of course, in this process, it consists of a lot of meetings among different managers, employees. Okay, the meeting has different levels. You can have higher level meeting, or can relatively lower level meeting. Okay, but all these meetings are key are belongs to the intermediate term decision. Okay, we will talk about what is intermediate term decision. Okay, just in a second. Okay, the sales and operations planning can have two different levels. All right. You can occur at an aggregate level, or you occur at a detailed individual product level. All right. So what is the key difference between aggregate level and individual product level? That's actually very simple, very straightforward. So the aggregate sales and operations planning is actually corresponding to a group of projects. Okay. But in contrast, the detailed individual product level of the operations planning is actually for one specific type of product. Okay, that's the key difference. It's very straightforward. But here, since we are actually standing as the company point of view, right? The whole company point of view. So basically, we are more focusing on the aggregate level of the operations plan. Okay, we'll mostly talk about the aggregate level of the operations plan in this chapter. Okay. Okay, now we come to this chart. This also shows within this chapter. All right. So yeah, it shows some major operations activities. Okay, within the operations, operation process. Okay, actually you see we have the long range, medium range, and short range of the major operations activities. Okay, in this process. Okay, let's start from looking at the long range activities. Okay, so at the top you can see the three different things. It belongs to long range, process planning, okay, strategy capacity planning, and the supply network planning. Okay, these are not the main points for this chapter. All right, but at least you guys need to understand what it means. All right, the process planning is actually the test will already show you. The process planning deals with determining the specific technologies and procedures required to produce a product or service. So basically, this planning process, okay, the process planning is more dealing with the manufacturing process, okay, or service process itself, okay. And then the strategic capacity planning. The strategic capacity planning deal with the determining the long-term capabilities of the production system. Okay, so this plan is more dealing with the supply capacity. Okay, and additionally, the supply network plan determines how the product will be distributed to the customer on the outbound side. Okay, on the outbound side. So you can see that these three things are corresponding to the manufacturing, okay, the inside supply point of view or outside demand point of view, okay. So no matter which planning belongs to this long range, planning dimension. Normally, this type of the long range planning is focused on a horizon greater than 1 year, okay. So, but none of this basically is the sales operations planning. All right, none of this. But if you look at the medium range, or we call it intermediate range planning, okay, you can see actually the sales and operations or the aggregate planning shows in this dimension. And more specifically, we can separate sales and operations planning into two different parts, which are sales planning and aggregate operations planning. Okay, so first of all, before we even talk about sales planning and aggregate operations planning, since they belong to intermediate range planning, right? So what it means by intermediate range, right? Normally it covers a period from 3 to 18 months. Okay, so long range planning, as we just mentioned, it normally focuses on a horizon greater than 1 year. Yeah, it's more higher level decision, higher level planning. Okay, but when we get down to the medium range decision, okay, medium range planning, okay, it becomes more specific, more detailed, and it corresponds to a period from 3 to 18 months. And the main thing for this chapter, the sales and operation planning, actually belongs to intermediate range planning. Okay, it's not belong to long range, it's not belong to short range, but it belongs to intermediate range planning. Okay, so now let's look at the sales planning, all right, and the operation planning. Okay, the sales planning, okay, it more focus on since they relate to sales, right? So sales plans are inputs to sales force activities, which are the focus of marketing books. Okay, you need to have very detailed plans about sales, which is actually corresponding to the marketing department. All right. And on the other side, the operations plan provides input into the manufacturing, logistics, and the service planning activities of the firm. Okay, so sales plan is more related to the marketing, and agri operations plan is more related to those uh, daily operations or normal operations. Okay, so they're different. So, but in this chapter, actually, we are more focusing on the agri operations plan since this is operation management, right? This is not marketing class. So we're more focusing on the aggregate operations planning. Okay. Once we have the aggregate operations planning, all right, then of course we make it more specific into three different dimensions, as also shown within this picture: the manufacturing dimension, logistics dimension, and the service dimension. Okay, and we have the more detailed activities. Okay, so basically, the main thing that shows within the chart is with this picture is that the planning is from the more higher level, okay, to the more detailed thing, all right, from the top to the bottom, okay. And more higher level planning, of course, it actually is planned for a longer time period, and more short and yeah, right. And a short range type of the planning, it actually corresponds to the planning for a shorter time period. Okay, that's actually very intuitive. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, as I said, we are more focusing on the aggregate operations planning. Yeah, the aggregation of so basically, since as I said, since this is the operation planning, we're trying to balance between the demand and the supply, right? So the aggregation on the supply side is done by product families, but on the demand side is done by group of customers, right? Because demand is decided by the customers. The supply actually basically is decided by the product families. Okay, but for the planning itself is trying to balance between the demand and the supply. Okay, you'll get a deeper understanding about this when we get into the application. Okay, so still the long range planning, intermediate range planning, and the short range planning. All right, it's based on time, right? The long range planning is those plannings for higher level of decision. Okay, normally this planning focuses on horizon greater than 1 year. And then for the intermediate range planning, okay, those plannings are dealing with the more specific things, including the operations planning stuff. All right, normally focus on the period from 3 to 18 months. All right, and then the short range planning. The short range planning normally covering a period from 1 day to 6 months because those plans are dealing with the most specific things. Okay, most specific things. So even the daily inventory management, the daily delivery rate, those kind of things. Okay, so these are the different types of planning. Okay, now for the aggregate operations planning. Before we jump to the application, actually you can see that uh, here are some terms, here are some terms that probably we will use when we deal with the example. Let's kind of get some sense about these different terms. So, of course, first of all, the main purpose of having aggregate operation planning is to to specify an optimal combination of the production rate, workforce level, and inventory on hand. Okay, which is specifically showing in this slide. Okay, we're trying to use the aggregate operations planning to specify the optimal combination of these three different things. Okay, actually, these are the three key things. But when we jump into the example, you see we still have some other terms. Okay, so production rate, of course, is unit completed per unit of time, right? The unit completed per unit of time. The workforce level, how many numbers we need in this period. Okay, the inventory on hand, how many inventory we need to carry during this process. Okay, this it's a little bit arbitrary right now, but let's first get some sense about it. All right, and since it's an aggregate, right? We're not dealing with individual product. We're dealing with the product group, all right, or this product category. Okay, and we say that since this is the aggregate operations plan, this plan is done over intermediate range planning. Okay, which normally is between 3 to 18 months. Okay, so okay, the production planning environment. Okay, before we jump to the application, okay, the production planning environment, right? So we know that's the aggregate operations planning. Okay, is kind of affected by both the inside factors and outside factors. Okay, it's actually affected by both the internal and external factors. Okay, so let's just look at this picture directly. Okay, so no matter it's internal factors or external factors, okay, all of those different factors can constitute the production planning environment. Okay, and actually, as you can imagine, within this environment, right? Normally, the outside or the external factors, okay, it's hard for you to control, right? Sometimes you can kind of impact the outside factors or the external factors, but the external factor itself basically is out of control normally. But the internal factors, okay, sometimes actually is under control. All right, but you need to figure it out before you can, make a better production plan. Okay, let's look at this different things. Okay, let's say for external factors, the competitive behavior, the raw material availability, all right, whether this is available, the raw material is available from your supplier, right? It's probably is not under your control. Okay, how good is the market demand? All right, how good is the overall economic conditions? Okay, and what is the external capacity? Okay, these are all outside factors or external factors that can impact your production planning, right? Yeah. So the internal factors, let's say the supply capacity, the workforce level, the inventory level, and actual required for production level. All right, those are the internal factors. You can kind of control every one of these factors. All right, and which also will impact your production planning. Okay, so actually, in a sense, um, the application or the great example that we will talk about, we will discuss about just in a second. Okay, is trying to to balance or trade off between those different internal factors. Okay, you will see that. All right, we're trying to vary the workforce level, or we may try to vary the inventory level, or we may try to vary the supply capacity. But the overall, our target is the same. All right, our final target is to try to change those one or even more than one factor, internal factors, in order to provide a better production planning. That's our target. Okay, we will see it just in a second. Okay, now before we come to the real application. Okay, these are the 4 different strategies that we will apply for that application. Okay, for that example. Okay, which are chase strategy. Okay, the stable workforce variable work hours strategy, level strategy, or the subcontracting strategy. Okay, so the production planning strategies. Okay, our goal is very simple. We're trying to have a plan use the limited resources to meet for the market demand. Okay, there is a trade-off. Of course, none of this strategy dominates every other strategy. Okay, every strategy will have this advantage and also have a disadvantage. Okay, but in a sense, we're trying to look at this trade-off. Okay, we're trying to find the best one. Okay, among all alternatives given this specific example. All right, that's what we want to do. Let's briefly discuss about these 4 different strategies. Okay, big picture point of view. Okay, of course we will detail talk about every strategy within the example, but right now let's conceptually talk about these 4 strategies. First of all, the chase strategy. Okay, the chase strategy basically is like the following. All right, so if I know that the market demand is, let's say, 1,000, I will produce 1,000 exactly. Okay, I will exactly just produce this 1,000. But in order to give this very accurate production rate, okay, during this process, you have some disadvantage because since you are trying to produce the very exact amount, right? Sometimes you may not have enough employee because the market demand for every month can be different, right? Sometimes in this month you don't actually have enough employee. How to do that? You need to hire some new one. All right. But let's say if in the next month, if the market demand goes down, you actually have more employee than necessary. Then what you need to do, basically, you can lay off some of them. All right. So in the chase strategy, your production rate is always the accurate one by changing the workforce level. Okay. If the workforce level is less than necessary, you hire some new one. If the workforce level is lower than necessary, is higher than necessary, you lay off some of them. All right. So you give the accurate production rate by hiring or laying off some workers. Okay. But intuitively, if you hire some new employee, most likely they will not be able to do the things immediately. You have to train them, right? You have to pay some cost. Or if you lay off some workers, you give them some compensation, okay, in order to let them go away from the company. Okay, so in order to get this very accurate production rate, you will pay the hiring or laying off cost. Okay, so this is the trade-off within the chase strategy. Okay, let's look at the second one, which is called stable workforce but variable work hours. Okay, they don't actually give a short name for it. Okay, but the name that they gave to us, okay, which is stable workforce with variable work hours, actually gets the essence of this strategy. Okay, so if you compare it with the chase strategy, you see actually this strategy is totally different. Under this strategy, your workforce level is always stable. You don't actually hire or lay off certain employees during this process. Okay, but the work hours, for those constant employee are always not are variable. Sorry, are variable. All right. Sometimes they may only need to work, let's say, 7 hours per day. But sometimes, if the market demand for this product is higher, okay, what they need to do, basically, they may work more than, let's say, 8 hours per day. Okay, they may work 10 hours per day. Okay, let's say if the regular working hour per day is 8 hours, then for the additional 2 hours, okay, the company has to pay some overtime cost, right? Have to pay some overtime salary. Okay, so obviously, for this strategy, the advantage of this strategy is that you don't actually need to vary your workforce level, okay, during the process, such that you don't need to pay the hiring cost or laying off cost. That's for sure. All right, but since your workforce is stable, it cannot change, okay. But the market demand itself can change monthly, right? Then you have to work, sometimes work less, sometimes work more, depends on the market demand of the product. Okay, but if you want them to work more than necessary, then obviously you need to pay them the overtime salary. Okay, so this is the trade-off within this strategy. And then the level strategy. Okay, level strategy is also maintaining a stable workforce. Okay, working at a constant output rate. Okay, so basically you have a stable workforce level. They work at a constant output rate. You don't actually vary the working hours for those workforce. Okay, but since the market demand for every month can be different, then how you adjust for it. So in the level strategy, okay, since you have this constant workforce and you have the constant output rate for for those workers, all right, you have to use the inventory to kind of compensate the shortage of supplies during this process. Okay, so in some month, okay, if the inventory is more than necessary, okay, basically if you produce more than necessary, you have a lot of inventory. Okay, you can carry it for the next month. Okay, and then if the market demand for the next month is very high, then obviously you can use those inventory to kind of feed for the higher market demand, Okay, but there's also a challenging within this strategy. Since your workforce level is constant, all right, and they work at a constant output rate, okay, you don't actually have overtime or overtime rate, right? You don't have an overtime rate. It's not like the stable workforce variable work hours strategy, the second strategy, right? So you keep all those the same. Then basically sometimes if you don't have enough inventory, and if the market demand is high, then you will pay some cost. What is that cost? It's very obvious. It will be basically the back order cost, right? Yeah. Even if the customer is there, they need these products, but you don't have it, it will cost something. Okay. Let's say the goodwill. Even if they can wait, okay, it will actually hurt the goodwill of the company. So that would be the advantage and disadvantage of the level strategy. Okay, it won't need you to change the workforce level. It won't need you to count the overtime rate, but sometimes you have a higher risk of having the back order situation. Okay, the last one is called subcontracting. Okay, the subcontracting actually is also very straightforward. Okay, this strategy actually is a little bit similar as the first strategy, which is the chase strategy. we know that in the chase strategy, right, we hire or lay off employees in order to to fit for the market demand change, right? But in subcontracting, instead of hiring or laying off employees, right? If let's say if the let's say if the inventory is not necessary for the market demand, what they will do instead of hiring some new one, okay, they will basically just subcontract with some other supplier, okay, so directly get it from your supplier, okay. So in order to to compensate the variation during this process. But think about what is the disadvantage of using subcontracting. Okay, the disadvantage of using subcontracting is also very obvious. Okay, normally if you produce yourself, the cost will be lower than the cost that you need to pay for your supplier, right? So if you subcontract with some other supplier in order to get these, the actual amounts, you have to pay more to your supplier. Okay, sometimes the cost itself will be, it's not that it's not that small. It may also be huge. So these will be four different strategies that we will use. Yeah, within the example that we will discuss just in a second. All right. So if for a company, if we only use one strategy, okay, we call the use of pure strategy. But actually, in the real cases, sometimes actually the company uses the mixed strategy. What means by mixed strategy? You may use more than one strategy that we just discussed about. Okay, they may use, let's say, they may use chase strategy with the level strategy. Okay, they may use those mixed strategy. So we will not talk about the mixed strategy, how the but we will talk about every strategy separately. Okay, but if you actually already understand what it means by every strategy, it will be not that hard to to get it mixed. Okay, but let's use the application to talk about these four different strategies. Okay, so actually for this, yeah, this are the relevant costs for different strategies. Okay, as I said, there's no one strategy dominates all the other strategies, because every strategy has its advantage and a disadvantage. Okay, of course, no matter which strategy, you have to produce the amounts in order to fit for the market demand, right? So you have to incur the basic production cost. But besides that, different strategies actually will incur different type of cost, right? So one cost, like it shows here, cost associated with changes in the production rate, right? So maybe the market, since the market demand itself is variant, right? So in order to fit for the market demand, you may actually hire or lay off employees. That would be some cost, right? The third cost would be the inventory holding cost, right? So like I said, within the level strategy, right? Your workforce level is constant. They are actually working at a constant output rate, right? So, but how we change, how we fit for the market demand. Basically, we're using inventory, right? We're using inventory to fit for this fluctuation, okay? But of course, as we said within the inventory management chapter, right? When you actually are having inventory, you are facing inventory holding costs. Okay, you're facing inventory holding costs, and sometimes if you actually hold a lot of inventory within your warehouse, that will also incur a lot of cost for your company. All right, the back order cost. Yeah, so sometimes if your inventory is less than necessary, all right, then even if the customer is here, you cannot give him the product. Even if he or she is willing to wait for your product, you may also hurt your company. Okay, let's say the goodwill. Okay, some other things. So every strategy has its corresponding cost. Okay, but in one specific example, which strategy is best? It actually needs quantitative calculation. Okay, you need some calculation. Okay, now, yeah, this is the three different type of methods that we can use for in order to deal with the aggregate operations planning. But yes, originally I planned to also do the simulation. All right, listed here. But since our time is very limited, I won't actually spend time to talk about the simulation. We will not go through simulation in this course. And we will most focus on the cut and try approach, basically the first one. Okay, we will focus on the first one. And if you look at the textbook, you can see that the textbook itself also focuses on the first one, the cut and try approach. Okay, so basically in this approach, we calculate the overall cost, the total cost under each strategy. Okay, so basically, if under every strategy, you can calculate the corresponding cost. And let me ask you this simple question. Okay, let's say under every strategy, you can calculate the corresponding cost, but which strategy we should use? It depends on, okay, under which strategy the cost is lowest, basically, right? So intuitively, we basically just calculate the overall cost under every strategy. Which strategy can give us the lowest cost? We pick up that strategy, right? But since under specific example, right, the calculation for certain things, let's say the ordering cost, the inventory cost, are specific numbers. All right. So if we change the number, then even if we just change one number, okay, under within that context, the total cost for different strategy can change drastically. But remember, the key insight or the key sense is that we always pick up the strategy that will provide you the lowest cost. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, now let's start to talk about this example. Okay, so this example is showing from page 248 until 253. Okay, 253. This is a big example showing within the textbook. Okay, I would give you this the core essence of this example. Okay. Okay, let's now look at this. In this slide, okay, this basically are the information that this example give you guys. All right. So before doing any analysis, these are all the information shown here. Okay, you see that in the top, all right. Let's say based on a very accurate forecast. Okay, you already we talk about the forecasting tool, right? Let's suppose we already, based on those forecasts too, we forecast the market demand for every month. Okay, basically January, February, March, April, May, and June. You see that the demand forecast is different for every month, right? And the total would be 8,000. That's it. And the number of working days for every month is different. Okay, that's very intuitive, right? It's different. Okay, and then the context show you a lot of different costs. Okay, a lot of different costs. Okay, so let's say the material cost, the inventory holding cost, the cost of stock out, the cost of subcontracting, or hiring and training costs, layoff costs, labor costs, labor hours, and production cost and overtime cost. Okay, a lot of costs. So first of all, not every cost is necessary for every strategy. All right. For example, the hiring and the training cost. This cost is only happens when you are using which strategy? We have 4 strategies, right? It only happens when you are using the chase strategy, right? The hiring training cost, also the layoff cost, right? Each time when you need more employee, you incur hiring cost. Each time when you don't actually need so many employees, okay, you incur layoff cost. Okay, but both of them are under the chase strategy, right? Under the chase strategy. Okay, and also you see the marginal cost of subcontracting, of course, is corresponding to the subcontracting strategy. Okay, so here, all right, at the left hand side, you can see that the material cost is not relevant actually. Okay, what it means. So basically, no matter under which you can view it like this. So no matter under which strategy, your final target basically is just to produce enough, products in order to feed for the market demand, right? No matter under which strategy, you will produce the overall in total, you'll produce those amounts for every month, right? In order to fit for the market demand. Basically, the material itself is the same for every strategy. So when you calculate the cost, you don't actually need to include this part. Okay, so that's why when we later on when we calculate, we don't actually include the material cost. This is not relevant. Okay, or if you calculate this, it's okay because it's the same for every strategy. Okay, all right. So it also tell you that at the end of this table, it also tell you that the inventory, the beginning inventory is 400 units. All right, and yeah, the safety stock, right? In inventory management, we talk about safety stock. The safety stock, the purpose of having safety stock basically is to kind of prevent the the risk of the demand fluctuation. Here we tell you that the safety stock for every month is 25% of month demand. All right. So for example, if for January, all right, the safety stock would be 25% times 1,800. Okay, I think it would be 450. All right, 450. Of course, for February it would be different because the demand forecast would be different. All right. Okay. So let's move to given all this context. Okay, we will start to do analysis. Okay. But before we do analysis for every strategy, we first actually do some common parts, basically the common parts. All right. So let's look at this. Remember, we already tell you that the beginning inventory is 400 units. Okay, for January. Okay, for January. Okay, then we can calculate what is the ending inventory within January. Remember, the ending inventory for January is equivalent to the beginning inventory for February. The ending inventory for February is equivalent to the beginning inventory for March. Okay, which is the same pattern for the following months. Okay, if I tell you that the beginning inventory for January is 400, how to calculate the ending inventory for January? It's quite simple. First, basically, beginning inventory is what you have within your warehouse, right? But what you need to produce within this month is which amount? How to calculate that? You already know that the demand forecast for January, okay? Demand forecast for January is 1,800, right? It's 1,800. And also, besides that, you also need to prepare a safety stock, which is 25% of this month's demand. All right. So that's why here you see for January, the demand forecast is 1,800. The safety stock is 25% of this demand forecast, which is 450. Okay. So in total, what amount you need? Basically, you need to add up these two amounts. Okay. This is the total amount that you need for this month. Okay, the beginning inventory is basically the total amount that you already have within your warehouse. Then how many you need to produce for this specific month? It's very straightforward. You use the total amount that you need. Basically, you need to sum up the demand forecast with the safety stock, and then minus what you already have, which is the beginning inventory. This amount is corresponding to the production requirements. Okay, how many you need to produce within this month, right? How many you need to produce within this month, okay? And then the ending inventory basically is, as you see, would be what you already have, plus additionally what you will produce within this month, minus, okay, the demand forecast. And you can see that here within this example, the ending inventory amount is always, the amount itself is always the same as safety stock, right? And the safety stock, you see, no matter under which month, it's always the same. It's actually very intuitive, right? Because actually, in this example, the further assumed there's, right, the unexpected doesn't happen. That's why you see, you produce safety stock basically is to prepare for unexpected things. But since the unexpected things, the assumed unexpected doesn't happen. That's why the ending inventory is always the same as the safety stock. Okay, and then it will transform as the beginning inventory for the next month. Okay, so basically all the numbers shown here, okay, can be you can calculate all these numbers given this fashion basically. Okay. Yeah, this would be the 4 different planes. We say the chase strategy, the subcontracting strategy, the level strategy, or the stable workforce with variable work hour strategy. All right, 4 different strategies. Okay, basically, given the context and then the common part of the calculation, we will start to use every strategy to calculate what is the total cost under that strategy. Okay, and after we calculate for every strategy, we compare the total cost. The total cost, which is lowest, okay, the lowest total cost basically is corresponding to the strategy that is best fit for this example. Okay, but again, like I just mentioned, since this is depending on the specific number of that I give within this context, if I change any number, okay, it may actually change the strategy that's corresponding to the lowest total cost. Okay, so let's suppose the number is showing like this. Okay, and then we already do the common part of the calculation like this. The slide shows this, this slide shows. Now let's look at the first plane. Okay, let me give you the sense about how we calculate total cost. Okay, actually you see that there's a lot of numbers showing this slides. Okay, I understand it looks very complicated, but actually the sense is very simple. Let me show you the inside of this. All right. Okay, let's start from the January. Okay, the first row is the production requirement. Okay, the production requirement in January is basically 1850. Okay, 1850. How to get this? Let's look at this. You see, we already calculated this part, right? This beginning inventory, demand forecast, safety stock, and the production requirement. Actually, we already calculated the production requirement for January, right? Yeah. How to get the production requirement? Again, we use the total amount that we need minus the total amount that we have. We already have, right? To get the production requirement, basically, in a sense, is the total amount that we need to produce. All right, we need to produce. Okay, so this is 1,850. Okay, so 1,850 is a production requirement. Okay, this is basically the production numbers. Okay, the production amounts. Then we need to transform to the corresponding production hours. Okay, in the context, you already know that for every unit, it actually needs 5 labor hours, right? It's 5 per unit. So the production hours would be, if I already tell you that this is the production amount, okay, how to get the production hours? Very straightforward. This 1,850 times 5 in order to get corresponding production hours. That's it, right? The production hours. Okay, so basically, I already know that in January, the production hours is 9,250. Okay, it's 9,250. Okay, but since I need to calculate how many workers I need, right? How many workers I need. Before I can calculate how many workers I need, okay, I need to calculate in this month, okay, in every month, for every worker, it can basically work for how many hours, right? For every worker, it can work for how many hours. Let's look at this. So, already showing the context, right? The number of working days is 22 days within January. So that's why here the working days within January is 22. Okay, it's 22. Within this 22 days, all right, for every day, every worker will, regularly work how many hours? 8 hours. Okay, so basically for every worker, in one day, he works 8 hours. And specifically in January, he worked 22 days. So 176 basically is calculated by multiplying 22 with what? With 8. You use 22 times 8 to get this 176. What this 176 means? It means that for every worker, okay, he or she can work 176 hours in this month. Okay? Okay, then, since you already know that within this month, the total working hours that you need in order to produce this specific amount is 9,250 hours. For every worker, okay, it can work 176 hours. How many workers you need? It's very straightforward, right? You use the total working hours divided by this 176 hours for every worker in order to get the number of workers you need for this within the January. It will be 53. Okay, 53. Here, the example, okay, assume that, okay, we have this 53, exactly this 53 for the first month. Okay, for the first month. We don't need to hire any new employee. We exactly have 53. Okay, that's why here, you see, this is 53. The workers is 53. You directly use 9,250 divided by 176. Okay, it may have some decimal point, but you just run it up to get this 53. Okay, and since we assume that at the beginning we have the 53 workers, that's why you see you don't need to hire any new workers, or you don't actually need to lay off any workers in this process. That's why you see in this column, the hiring cost is 0, the layoff cost is also 0. Okay, what is the production cost? The production cost, you see, the production hours is 9,250, right? It's 9,250. Okay, this is corresponding to production hours. Okay, and for every hour, we already see here, for every hour, the straight time cost, basically, what is straight time cost? Basically, you can view it just like the production cost. The production cost for every hour is $4. Since you're producing product, right? It actually takes electricity, it needs water, it needs monitoring. Okay, let's say this is $4 per hour. Then, of course, for this 9,250 hours, the straight time cost basically is times 4 to get this cost. Okay, that's why the straight time cost for January is $37,000. All right, now let's look at the February. Okay, since in this plane, okay, we don't actually have inventory, right? Because why we don't have inventory? Think about this. In this strategy, we call it chase strategy, right? What is the advantage of chase strategy? The chase strategy is basically produce exact amount. Since you are producing the exact amount, you don't actually have inventory, right? You don't actually have inventory. That's why you don't have inventory. Okay. So since you don't actually have inventory, there's nothing you will carry to the next month. That's why in strategy 1, the chase strategy, every column basically it's still related. It's still related. Don't get me wrong. It's still related, but you don't actually need to carry inventory from one month to another month. Okay. Now let's look at the February. Okay. Let's look at why it's still related. Look at this. So everything else, when you calculate, is still the same. For the February, the production requirement, you see, that's right. So you see that the production requirement, where to calculate this, all right? So for February, the production requirement is 1,425, right? It's showing here. That's why this is 1,425, showing here, okay? So you have the production requirement amount, okay? But you need to transform to production hours, right? This amount is production amounts. We need to transform to production hours. For every unit, it needs 5 hours. You times 5, 1,425 times 5 to get this amount. Okay? And for January, specific working days is this. It's 19. Right? The specific working days is 19 days. And still, all right, still for every working day, for every worker, okay, for every worker, the working hours within February is 152. How to get this? Use 19 times 8. Very straightforward, 19 times 8 to get this 152. Okay? So this is the total production hours that you need to fit. This is for every worker that he or she can produce this produce for this hour. Then this amount 7,125 divided by 152 in order to get the required worker numbers, right? You need basically in February, you need 47 workers. Okay, you need 47 workers. But remember, in January, how many workers you have? It's 53 instead of 47. Okay, so let's say in January you have 53, but actually you find out that in February you only need 47. What do you need to do? You don't actually need those 6 more workers, right? You don't need this 6 more workers. You will lay them off. You will lay them off. So basically, since you only need 47 hours, of course you don't need to hire a new one. That's why the hiring cost is still there. But you need to lay off some of the workers, actual workers, which is 6. Why is it 6? It's 53 minus 47, which is 6. Okay, which is 6. And what is the layoff cost? Look at this. The layoff cost is $250 per worker. And since you lay off 6, you use 250 times 6 to get this 1,500. So the layoff cost is 1,500 for this specific February. For this specific month, which is February. All right. The straight time cost still you use the production hours times the $4 per hour to get this amount. Okay, it should be straightforward. Okay, now let me ask you a question. At the end of February, how many workers do you have? Is it 53? No, it's not 53 anymore because you already laid off 6 workers. Right now, you have 47. Now let's move to March. If you move to March, the production requirement is still calculated within this table. See, 1,000. That's why this is 1,000. You calculate the corresponding production hours. Okay, and then same fashion, right? In the same fashion, for every worker, the working hours is 168 for this specific month. Then the workers required is actually 30. Remember, at the end of February, how many workers you have? Which is 47. But right now, you only need 30. What do you need to do? You need to further lay off some of the employees. Okay, so that's why hiring cost is still 0. But you need to lay off another 17 workers. And the corresponding layoff cost is 4,250. Okay, and straight time cost is based on this production hours. Okay, and you see, if you just look at this row, it's going down from 53 to 47, and then further go down to 30. In April, it's further down, go down to 25. So you can see that actually at the end of April, it's 25. Okay, it's 25. You only have 25 workers. Okay, you only have 25 workers because why you only have 25 workers? Because you see, the production requirement is always going down, right? From January to April. You don't actually need so many workers to produce the corresponding number of the products, right? Number of the products. That's why you see here it's always going down. But in May, by still doing the same calculation, you see that the workers required is 33. So basically, you only have 25, but right now you need 33. What do you need to do? You need to hire another 8 workers. Why is 8? It's 33 minus 25 to get this 8. Since you need to hire some new workers. For every worker, you need to train them, right? New workers, you need to train them, and it's $200. That's why 200 times 8, you get this 1,600. This is the hiring cost. Okay, and since in this specific month you need to hire new workers instead of laying off workers, that's why the layoff cost is 0. Okay, the straight time cost still use the production hours times 4 to get this. Okay, in the same fashion for the last month. Okay, and you see that when you calculate total cost, remember in this strategy, what type of cost you need you will incur. Of course, first you are producing things. You need the production cost. That's why in every month you have the corresponding production cost, and the total is 160,000. That's it. And since you are using the exact production strategy or the chase strategy, by varying the workforce during the process. Sometimes you are hiring new employee. Sometimes you are basically you are laying off some old employees, right? So during this process, you are actually incurring the hiring cost or the layoff cost. Okay, that's why you have these three different type of costs. In total, it will be 172,800. Whether we should choose this strategy, it depends on whether the cost under other strategy is higher or lower, um, compared to this strategy. All right. Okay, now let's go to plan 2. In the plan 2, is assuming we have constant workforce, okay, but we vary the inventory and stock out, vary inventories. So here, the core plan 2 basically this is corresponding to the I think it would be the level strategy, okay, the level strategy that I just mentioned, okay. So compared to plan 1, your workforce will not change. You will not hire or lay off employees during this process, okay, during this process. But your inventory will be fluctuated during this process. Okay, you have the constant workforce. They will produce they can actually produce certain amounts within every month. All right, and sometimes in some months you have additional inventory. Sometimes you don't actually have enough inventory. You need to incur the back order cost. Okay, that's the key sense of this plan. Before even we start the calculation. Okay, let's look at this. So let's look at from January. All right, we know that the beginning inventory is 400 in January, right? That's already given here, 400. Okay. Still, the working days per month, working days in January is 22. That's already what we have. All right. But the third thing, what is the production hours available? In order to get the production hours available, okay, since basically in this strategy, the workforce itself is constant, then you actually naturally you will have the question, since this is constant, what is the corresponding amount for the workforce level? How many workers we need for every month? Okay, how many workers we need for every month? And you know that actually basically the market demand for every month is different, right? The market demand, you see, the demand forecast for every month is different. Then how we decide the workers, the constant workers for every month? Okay, so basically the core idea here is that, okay, we consider all of the amount and we take the average. Okay, on average, how many workers we need. Okay, in order to do that, remember here you see the demand forecast itself is what? In total is 8,000, right? It's 8,000. That's why here it's 8,000. Okay, actually they calculate this 40 workers for every month, but how they calculate this, that's the most important thing. So in total for all of the months, the market demand is 8,000. Is 8,000, all right? So 8,000 market demand of the specific product, right? It needs how many hours? Remember, for every product, it needs 5 hours, right? So in total, 8,000 products times 5 to get the corresponding hours. So that's why here you see 8,000 times 5. This is the total production hours that we need during this whole period. Okay, and then we divide it by basically the working hours, right? What is the total working hours per worker? Okay, what is the total working hours per worker during this period? How to get this? Think about this. In January, he works 22 days. In February, he works 19 days. In March, he works 21 days. How many working days in total he will work in this period? Basically, very simple. You add all of them up, right? And actually, in the context, it already tell you it will be 125. 125 is what? It's 125 days. So basically, during this period, he works 125 days. And so 125 days. And for this worker, since he works 8 hours regularly, so for this worker during this period, the working hours per worker is 125 times 8. All right. So the total production hours divided by the working hours per worker, okay, during this period equals to 40. Means that on average, you need 40 workers. That's why here it shows 40 workers. Okay, it shows 40 workers. Okay, so on plan 2, since this is a constant workforce, what is the amount? It's 40 based on this calculation. This is actually very intuitive, right? You consider all of those methods and then calculate the average worker numbers you need. Okay, and you do not change it. You hide this worker. You basically you have this 40 workers at the beginning. You don't change it. Okay, let's look at this. So the working days, let's say for January. Let's get back to this column, the first column. The working days in January is 22, right? And for every worker, since he works 8 hours per day, and since we have 40 workers, okay, the production hours available is 7,040. Okay, you use 22 times 8 times 4, 40, that's it. Okay, this is the production hours available. Remember, this is the production hours. We need to transform back to production amount. All right. For every amount, it needs how many hours? 5 hours, right? Should be 5 hours, I think. Yeah, it's 5 hours. So this is the total hours divided by 5 in order to get the production amount, which is 1408. Okay, 1408. What is the demand forecast? Okay, we already mentioned that. The demand forecast is 1800, right? It's 1800. Okay, then what is ending inventory? Okay, think about this. How to get the ending inventory? It should be straightforward, right? At the beginning, in January, how many inventory you have? 400. Within the January, you produce how many amounts? 1408. Okay, so at the beginning you have 400. In this process, you additionally produce 1408. So in total, how many you have? How many products you have? You have 1808, right? You add them up. 400 add the 1408. So in total, you have 1808. Okay, so in total, you have 1808. What do you need for this amount? It's 1800, right? It's 1800. So the ending inventory would be 8, right? You sell the 1800, but the additional 8 amounts, you cannot sell it. This will become ending inventory. Okay. So since you have the inventory, do you incur the shortage cost or back order cost? No, right? You don't actually lose any costing opportunity. So this is 0. The safety stock is 450. We already talked about this, right? The safety stock, you see, the safety, basically, you see right here, the safety stock basically 25% of the demand forecast every month. Okay, so the safety stock. Okay, here the example assume that, okay, when you have the inventory, okay, only when the amount is above the safety stock amount, you need to pay the inventory holding cost. Otherwise, even if you have the inventory, you don't actually need to pay for it. That's basically just an assumption for it. All right. So here, although we have the inventory, which is 8, right? But the safety stock is 450. 8 is much less than 450. So actually, you don't need to pay for the inventory holding cost. That's why the inventory holding cost here is still 0. It's still 0. And the straight time cost, very straightforward, right? You use the production hours. This is the production hours, right? Times 4 to get this amount. Okay? So this would be the for this January. Since we actually incur inventory already, right, within this plan. Thus, when we start to talk about February, the next month, the beginning inventory is equivalent to the ending inventory of the previous month, which is 8. Okay, So this 8 and this is 8. So this will be the 8. All right. Okay, so this will be 8. The working day per month is 19. It's 19. And yeah, it's 19 instead of 22, right? In January, it's 19 here. So still, it's the same thing, right? The calculation itself is the same thing. So working days is 19 for every day. Every worker regularly work 8 hours. So you use 19 times 8, and then times 40 to get the total production hour available. The total production hour available is this amount, 6,080. And then you further divide it by 5 in order to get the production amount, okay, for that mouse. Okay, now the beginning inventory is 8. You further produce 1,216. So in total you have 1,224, right? It's 1,224. So 1,224 is less than 1,500 basically. Okay, it's less than 1,500. So yeah, so basically all you have is less than what you need, right? It's less than what you need. So basically in this kind of situation, right, here they say the end inventory is a negative number. Okay, this is kind of not that rigorous. All right, normally when we say any inventory, it always be at least non-negative number. But here, why is negative number? It assumes that okay, now we don't have this inventory, but finally we will fill in back, and the customer, and we assume that the customer will wait for our refillment. So although the total amount that we have is 1,224, and what we need is 1,500, right? We use this 1,500 minus the 1,224 to get this, or actually you can use 8 plus 1,216 minus 1,500 to get this negative number. So this negative number basically means that, okay, intuitively the customer needs this additional 276 products, but we don't have it right now, and they will wait for it. All right. And since you don't have this amount, you will cost the shortage cost, which is, or you can call it back order cost. For every unit short, it actually costs $5. That's why in total it's 1,380. Okay, since this is dollar amount, you don't actually use the negative number, it's the positive one, right? And the safety stock for February is 375, right? But since actually right now you don't even have inventory, right? You still have the back order situation. That's why this is always zero, obviously zero. And straight time cost, just use this production hour available times 4 to get this straight time cost. Okay, and then that's why you see the beginning inventory of the March is a negative amount. It's a negative amount, all right? And you still use the same. You use the same fashion, all right? This beginning inventory is negative amount. Basically, in the March when you produce, some of the amount actually is actually compensated for the previous amounts, right? So you still use the beginning inventory plus the production amount minus demand forecast. And the end inventory is still a negative number. It's still a negative number, okay? Which means that, okay, you still have the backorder situation. And then that's why you still pay the shortage cost. And since you don't actually have inventory, right, you still have the backorder situation. You don't have this inventory. That's why here the inventory cost is still 0. Okay, and straight time cost, you just use production hours times 4 to get straight time cost. All right. And then in April, beginning inventory is still a negative one. Yeah, the production, you still use the same way to calculate the production hour available, right? The same. You see, these two numbers are even the same. Why? Because the working days for these two months are the same. The regular hours, it's always 8 hours per day. And you always have 40 workers for different months. That's why the amount is the same, right? The production amount is also the same. Okay, so here at the beginning, okay, you owe 32 products, okay, for March. Here, in this month, you produce another 1,344, right? So you compensate that. And the demand forecast is only 900. Thus, you have additional 412 in inventory. Okay, so you don't actually have the backorder situation. You already, you already compensate for that, right? Right now, you already have the inventory instead of backorder situation, and you see that your inventory is above the safety stock amount. So for the actual amount that is above the safety stock level, you need to pay for the inventory holding cost. For every unit excess the safety stock level, you pay $1.5. That's why here this is 281. Still the same fashion to get the straight time cost. And then this is the same fashion for May and June. Okay? So in plan 2, basically, instead of having, so of course you still have the production cost for every month, but you don't actually have the hiring or laying off worker cost, right? Like we showed in plan 1, you don't have this. Instead, you have what? You have the shortage cost or the inventory holding cost, right? When your inventory is less than is not necessary, is not enough, you have to incur shortage cost. But if you have more than necessary, you will incur inventory holding cost. So you add all these three up to get this total cost amount. Let's say if you only have 2 strategy, okay, which plan you should choose? You should choose the plan 2 because the plan 2, the total cost is lower. This is 162,488 and this is 172,800. That's why if you want to have 2 plane, you should choose plan 2. But since right now we have 4 different planes, let's look at the third plane and first plane, and then we make the decision. Okay, the third plane. The third plane actually is simpler. All right, the third plane is corresponding to the subcontracting strategy. Okay, the subcontracting strategy. You see that actually the main point here is similar as what we just mentioned as rigid, but it's still a little bit different. All right, let's look at this. In third plane, you see the key point is that you still keep the constant low workforce. Instead of constant workforce, what is the constant low workforce? I will explain just in a second. And then you subcontract when you need more. Okay? So remember that in plan 2, when we decide how many workers we need, we consider all of the months, right? We consider all of the months. But here, since this is a constant low workforce, you can actually even imagine. Okay, you can imagine which month, instead of using all of the months, which month will we use? We use April. Why we use April? Okay. Your requirement, basically your criteria, is constant low workforce. It's constant low workforce, right? Since this is the constant low workforce, okay, you basically choose the month. You don't actually choose you don't consider every month. You only consider month that needs the lowest production requirement. Lowest production requirement, all right? If you look at the production requirement for every month, 1850, 1425, 1000, 850, 1150, 1725. The production requirement for which month is lowest? Of course, it's 850. It's the lowest. All right. So the production requirement for this month is the lowest. Okay. Intuitively, it's corresponding to the lowest worker force level, right? It's corresponding to the lowest workforce level. That's why we pick up April. Okay. Yeah. But you can think about this. Why we choose the lowest one? If you choose the lowest production requirement, which is corresponding to the lowest workforce level, then obviously for every other month, the production amount probably, or actually the production amount will definitely less than the market demand, right? It's less than market demand. But for the difference, how you deal with it, you subcontract with the supplier. You pay for it, okay? Pay for additional amount. But in this plane, what is the advantage? You only have a lower amount of workers, right? So your salary, okay, or the production, the production cost itself will be lower, is the lowest compared to other planes. Okay, that's the trade-off. Yes, you will have lower production cost, but you will have a higher what cost? Higher subcontracting cost. Okay, let's look at this plane. Let's first look. So before actually we can start to look at, calculate all the things, we first need to calculate what is the constant worker numbers. Since this is, we need to pick up the lowest one. We just look at the first row. A50 is the lowest. A50 is the lowest production requirement. We need to calculate the corresponding worker numbers, right? We need to, A50 is the production requirements, right? This is the production amount. A50 times 5 is the corresponding production hours. And that's in April, right? So A50 times 5 is the production hours. And then we divide it by, in this month, the working days is 21. For every worker, it's basically 21, right? And for every worker, the regular working hours per day is 8 hours, right? So what is the total working hours? It's 21 times 8. It's 21 times 8. So basically you use A50 times 5 divided by the product of 21 and 8, all right, to get the corresponding worker numbers. So you see the calculate here. So the amount is 25. So you already know that, okay, under this plane, you just hire 25 workers. You just have 25 workers, okay? And you know that the production amount will be not necessary for the market demand, because right now you only feed for lowest workforce, all right, lowest workforce. For the extra amount, you use subcontracting. Okay, that's the key idea within Plan 3. And then, all right, let's start from January. So in January, the production requirement is 1850, okay? I don't need to explain more about it, right? Because it's right here, okay, in this row. Basically, this row is corresponding to this row, exactly, all right? And then working days per month is 22 for January, and use 22 times 8 hours per day times, since you only have 25 workers, the production hours available is this amount, 4,400, right? So production hours is 4,400. Production amount is what? Is use 4,400 divided by 5 to get this amount, which is production amount. The production amount is 880, all right, the 880. Okay, so in order to fit for the market, you need to produce 1850, showing here. But actually, by having 25 workers, you can only produce 880. How many additional units you need? You use 1850 minus 880 to get this 970. All right. So besides the production ability, okay, this 25 workers can offer, you still need this 970. How you can get this 970? You buy from other suppliers by using subcontraction. Okay, and we know that for every unit, the subcontraction cost is $20. And since actually you have 970, you use 970 times 20 to get the total subcontracting cost. And for the units that you produce yourself, you use this production hours times 4 to get this straight time cost. Okay? So, under this plane, every column is separate. Okay, it's different from Plan 1 or Plan 2. In this plane, every column is separate. Okay, you see that for every column, you have the subcontracting cost and the corresponding production cost. And you can see that among all of the column, this column, the subcontracting cost is lowest. Why? Because the production requirement itself is lowest, right? We're using this. This is the lowest. That's why the subcontracting cost for this specific amount is lowest. All right. So finally, when we try to calculate the total cost, okay, so every column is using the same fashion to calculate, okay, exactly as the January. And once we calculate for all of the amounts, the total subcontract cost is shown here, and the total production cost is shown here, and the total cost is basically you just add them up to get the total cost, which is 160,000. Now again, I'll ask you the same question. By comparing plan 1, plan 2, and plan 3, which plan you should choose? You should choose 100. You should choose plan 3 because you see the total cost is 160,000, which is lower than 162,488, which is further less than 172,800. That's it. Okay. Now let's look at plan 4. Plan 4, is corresponding to basically the second one, the stable workforce with variable work hours, showing on the page 247 in chapter 8 in the textbook. Okay. So basically in this text, in this plan, you have the constant workforce. Okay, you have the constant workforce, but for some months, if the inventory itself is not enough, okay, let's say if you don't actually have enough inventory, okay, but you only have those workers, you will not subcontract with the outside supplier. What do you need to do? Okay, you need those workers to work more. Okay, the regular hours is 8 hours per day, right? But probably in those specific amounts, if you need to produce more, you need to let those workers work more than 8 hours. But you have to pay more, for the overtime, right? You have to pay more for the overtime. That's how it works. Okay. In this plan, all right. The tricky thing is that since this is based on constant workforce. Okay, it's still based on constant workforce. So you still have to first calculate what is that amount. But here, since actually this math 38 is from the simulation. Okay, it's from the simulation. So I will not let you guys to calculate this specific amount. So for the question that you may occur, let's say in the homework or exam, I will directly tell you what is that amount. Okay, you don't need to use the simulation. So let's say by using the simulation, we find out that we need 38 workers. Okay, we need the 38 workers for every month. Okay, then if under this strategy, with constant work but a very the overtime cost. All right, what is the total cost? Okay, it's a little bit similar as the previous plan. Let's look at this. So the beginning inventory. Remember, the beginning inventory for January is still 400. All right. The working days per month is 22. Then since actually in this month you have 22 days, and for every day, since every worker work 8 hours in regular, and you have 38 workers, that's why the production hours available is 6,688. All right. The 6,688 is production hours is corresponding to how many product units. You divide by 5 to get this. All right, use 6,688 divided by 5 to get 1,338. But obviously, the 1,338 even plus this 400, which is beginning inventory. Okay, if you plus 1,400, if you plus use 400 plus 1,338, the total would be 1,738, right? 38. 1,738 is still not enough for the market demand, which is 1,800. How many we need more? All right. So basically, or now after production, you have 1,738, but you need 1,800. You use this 1,800 minus that's 1,738 to get, this is 62, right? So basically, you still need another 62. Okay. But since you don't have more workforce, then you have to use the current workforce to produce this additional amount. Okay. So basically, you need to produce this 62 additional amount. Okay. For 62 units, every unit needs 5 hours, right? Every unit needs 5 hours. So use 62 times 5 to get the total hours, all right? And for every hour, the overtime cost is higher than regular dollar per hour, right? Yeah, the overtime cost is $6 per hour. The $6 per hour. That's why here the overtime cost is the 62 times 5 times 6. Okay, times 6 to get this overtime cost. Okay, still, actually, in January, do you have inventory? Think about this. At the beginning, you have 400. You further produce 1,338. But you need 1,800 to fit for the market demand. Of course, you don't have inventory. You don't have any inventory in January. So, of course, you don't actually have the inventory holding cost for the January. That's why all these things is zero. And the straight time cost still use the production hours times D4 to get the straight time cost. Okay? That's why since in the first month, your ending inventory is zero. That's why the beginning inventory of this next month is still zero. Remember, inventory, if you have it, you can carry over to the next month. That's very intuitive, right? So here, this is 0. And yeah, the working days per month is 19. And based on 38 workers, right? Still the same fashion, the 19 times 8 hours per day times 38 workers, this is production hours available. The production hours available divided by 5, you get the regular amount, right? So it's the amount that you can produce in regular. And you can see that this is 1,155. You don't have the beginning inventory. You can only produce 1,155 in this month, but you need 1,500. So that's why, okay, you still, in this month, you also need overtime to produce some more. What is specific amount? You use 1,500 minus 1,155 to get this. Okay, this is already figured out. This is a mistake showing in the textbook. It should not be 375. It should be 345. Okay, these two numbers should be corresponding to each other. Okay, so this would be 345. I think this is just a typo showing in the textbook. So it's 345. So for this 345 units, for every unit it needs 5 hours. And for every hour it needs $6. That's why overtime cost. You use 345 times 5 times 6 to get this amount. Okay? And the safety stock is 375. Okay? But of course, in this month, you can produce less than that 3. You don't have inventory for sure. All right? That's why here this is also 0, and straight time cost still use the production hours available to get the straight time cost. And since you don't have any inventory for February, that's why the beginning inventory for March is still 0. Okay? Doing the same fashion, you can calculate production hour available and then divide by 5 to get the production amount in regular time. This will be 1,277. But look at in March, the demand forecast is only 1,100. This time, the production amount that you can produce is above demand forecast, which means that all of the amount that you produce cannot sell to the market. You have inventory for this amount. Basically, what is that amount? It's just 1,277 minus 1,100. Yeah, it's 177. So this 177 is the amount that is your inventory, right? Since you have inventory, of course, you don't actually need overtime to produce more, right? That's why you see this is 0. 177 itself is less than 275. What is 275? It's a safety stock. In this example, even if you have the inventory, but if this amount is less than safety stock, you don't actually need to pay the inventory holding cost. That's basically just the assumption. That's why even if you have the inventory here, since this is less than 275, the inventory cost is still 0. And the straight time cost still use this production hour times 4 to get this straight time cost. All right. Now let's go to April. What is the beginning inventory for April? Remember, the ending inventory for March is what? It's 177. If you have the inventory, you can carry it to the next month. That's why April is 177. And in April, you still can produce some amount, which is 2,077. Here, the market demand is only 900. Okay, but what is the end inventory? Remember, you have the beginning inventory. Here, in this month, the beginning inventory is not 0 anymore. It's 177. You can produce 1,277 additional, right? Additionally. So you use this 177 plus this 1,277. These are the total amount that you have. But you can only sell 900. So you add these two numbers up minus this 900, you get the ending inventory. But in this month, the ending inventory is above or below the safety stock. It's already above the safety stock. So for the month that is above the safety stock, which is use 554 minus 225, right? For the month that is above that level, it needs to cost the inventory holding cost, okay? Which is 329 is the additional amount times $1.5 for every additional amount, which is then you can get $494, okay? And you keep this fashion for May and June. It's the same thing, basically. It's the same thing. So you see that in this plane, still you need to pay for the production cost. That's for sure, okay? Since you keep the constant workforce, then and also for the extra amount, you basically use the overtime cost, right? You use the overtime, yeah. So you incur the overtime cost, and also you may also incur the inventory cost. And then when you calculate the total cost, you add all them up to get the total cost, which is 165,491. So if you compare this with the previous three planes, all right, the total cost is basically higher than, especially higher than plane 3. Or we can say plane 3 is the lowest. If you look at this, all right, if you look at this, okay, this is the summary of this example. You see that under 4 planes, not every type of cost will incur, right? Not every type of cost will incur in every plane. In each plane, some of cost will incur. But no matter what type of cost we incur, our target is the same. We're trying to calculate the total cost, and we're trying to figure out which plane will give us the lowest total cost. That's the plane that we should go for. Here, obviously, it's plane 3. Then in this context, plane 3 is the best one. Okay, but actually, like I said at the beginning, if I just change some single numbers, okay, maybe the result will be different. Okay, so this is just a graphical summary. Okay, yeah, this is just give you some graphical sense of it, but I don't think this will be straightforward like this, or like this table. I think table is more straightforward. Obviously, plane 3 is best. Plane 3 is best, all right? Okay, so as I said at the beginning, I want to cover yield management, but if you are interested about yield management, please look at this, and if you have any questions, let me know, all right? So this is a video for chapter 8. Okay, you see that actually chapter 8 is also not a long chapter. It's a short chapter, and I would expect you guys to first look through the textbook, all right, and then look through the or the materials, the conceptual paragraphs that I mentioned. Except if you're interested, you can also look at the yield management, all right. And I detailedly talk about the 4 different strategies based on the this application. Okay, you may wonder in the exam how we actually have this type of question. Of course, I will not give you let you to calculate all of all of the numbers showing the different tables. That's impossible. But I may give you one column and let you to calculate based on let's say a specific strategy. So the key is to exactly understand under each strategy what is the key point, what is the characteristic of that strategy. Okay, what type of cost we need to consider under that strategy. and you need to correspondingly calculate it. I think that's enough. All right. So this is all for chapter 8. Thanks a lot for listening to this video. See you guys